Welcome to a new video in my home automation series, and today I'm going to talk about Taphome. Most probably this is going to be a first of a mini series about this home automation system, and this is not something new. This is something I found out about probably a couple of weeks ago, but this is a Slovakian home automation solution that exists for quite a few years now. I do have a friend who I usually talk to about home automation things and what is new products, and he does a lot of Zigbee, so whenever I have Zigbee questions I turn to him, and we always talk about new products. And then he asked me, like, have you heard about this Taphome? And I said, yeah, okay. No, what is it about? And have a look. They have an app that you can download. You can log into a demo client or a demo system. You can play around. You can have a feel how it looks like, how it feels like. And the one thing that really interests me is that I was just going quickly through the website, and I was looking at integration, and they do have a Modbus integration, and specifically not only to integrate Modbus devices, but also in order to expose their internal sensors and everything to Modbus. So the reason this became a little bit important for me, because there is going to be a house build in my extended family. So I was asked, I also want home automation in my house, so you have to help me. And I have to say I was in a little bit of a trouble, because I personally have a PLC-based home automation system, which I did a video about, which my father-in-law built, because he has a company that does industrial automation. So I was pretty sure that they are capable of delivering stuff and building and professionally installing it and everything. But that PLC is not a system where it could be made easily configurable. In most PLC systems, whoever installs the system would have all the access to the software that you need to write the programs. You don't usually give the access to that software to the client. More specifically, this SIA PLCs, they actually use, each software instance has a license. So you're not going to pay a license for your client, and learning how to use that is complicated. I learned this, but I wouldn't expect him to do that. And also there is, Node-RED is good, but again, there is a steep learning curve in order to get Node-RED. In my example, I always have to do some sort of development, and so I just can't expect him to do that. But on the other hand, he is the type of guy who would definitely want to go into and make changes to his house and home automation. So again, pure PLC solution wouldn't really cut it. And then I was thinking that maybe we should do something like a home automation, home assistant based thing. But to be honest, I'm not really an expert in home assistant, so I wouldn't recommend him something that I wouldn't be able to fully support him. So again, that was sort of out of the window. And this is a new build, so everything has to be wired. We have the option now to get everything wired in, all the switches, all the lights. Don't use Zigbee. And of course, there is a lot of other things, pools and well integration, solar panels, potential future expansion to battery storage. So, even with home automation, so home assistant, I wouldn't know how I could design a hardware that is definitely going to work with home assistant. So again, I just don't have an experience. And I found this Taphome. And the first thing that I really liked about that one is, as you're going to see later in the video, you can actually build, you deploy the hardware, everything is wired, there's no wireless connection, so that's great. And then, once that is done, all the configuration can be done on the phone, which is it's really, really great, because You can change your rules, you can change your logic, you can customize your UI, pretty much how you would do in Home Assistant as well. So I'm thinking that probably this is going to be the best solution for him. And I think what I would prefer to do is or recommend doing some sort of hybrid solution where we would use Taphome for the basic automation like lights and heating, and then everything which requires connection to specific hardware or something a little bit more specific, we would have a PLC. And this is why I said I was interested about I was really pumped to hear about the Modbus integration, because we can easily integrate the two systems with Home Assistant, with Modbus. So basically, the PLC can get the data that is in Taphome, and Taphome would be able to get the data which is in PLC. We just link the two systems together over Modbus. And by the way, I was trying to show you a couple of references. And as I said, the company is Slovakian. So you find a lot of references from Central Europe, but also they have a lot of references in Holland, Netherlands. There is Middle East, there is Far East as well. And yeah, at least you can see some wiring and everything, how it is all connected. And what I also wanted to highlight about the Taphome is the Taphome unit always comes with a core unit which has all the interfaces, and it has all the logic. So there is like a self-contained, probably some sort of single board Linux computer running in that one. So all the logic is at your home. So there is no cloud, well, no cloud in quotes. I'm just going to talk about that a little bit later. So all the logic is local. Everything is being executed and carried by this Taphome core unit. There is no subscription fee. So basically you buy the hardware and then you install it, or whoever you work with, they are going to install it, and then it's going to be yours. You would have access to it, and you can make changes to any of the logic inside. And of course, if there is software updates, then you can update the firmware, and yeah, most probably you would get some new features as well from time to time, or obviously bug fixes and security updates and that sort of stuff. So everything lives at your home, just like if you would have a Home Assistant which is running on your server, and that's your instance, and everything is happening locally. So as I said, your lights are going to work even if your internet goes down. Of course, probably the only limiting factor is if the Taphome core unit just breaks, then obviously that's like your Home Assistant server is breaking, so then you would lose the functionality. So previously I just said, cloud in double quotes. That means that there is still a cloud connection, but that cloud connection only facilitates for you to access your home automation setup from your mobile, from anywhere where you have internet connection. And that's the only thing the cloud connection does. And that again is included sort of in the price. I asked the implementation partner, they said this is, there is no fee. That's something that you would have access to forever. I mean, I guess there is no such thing as forever, but that's the intention of the company. So there is no hidden cost. Once you pay for the hardware and once you sign a contract with whoever is going to install it and it's going to do the initial configuration, you don't have any additional hidden cost. And of course, even though I talked about this cloud connection, you can always connect to your device locally. So if your internet goes away but you are at home, you can pull up the mobile app, and there is also a desktop app, and you can just access your system. And the way I got hooked onto this thing is Taphome works with local partners in each country where they operate. And I just contacted the local partner, which is an architecture firm here in Budapest, and they had a option to call in for a demo, well actually visit their offices. So there are like trainings that they organize for people who are interested in this solution. It's like a 2-hour training where they have a couple of demo devices, and you would just show up there and within 2 hours you will set up some basic automation. You either bring your phone or you bring your laptop, and you just sit in front of a demo hardware, and you start configuring switches, and you press the buttons and the lights go on, and you can go through various scenarios. So it was really good learning for me. I really like that. And then at the end they said that there is an option to purchase this demo unit, which consists a couple of things that you can see on the screen, with a, I don't know, like third or whatever price, what is normally the retail price. So this is the demo unit that I have. And what I'm planning to do with this unit is just to set up some live configuration sessions. I mean, technically it's not going to be, YouTube live. What I mean in live is that I'm going to take you through the whole process. So it's going to be, probably longer uncut videos where I start from scratch and I start configuring the lights and thermostats and blinds, and I mean, I don't know what else I would get to at the end, but I will go through all these things, and at the end you will have some ideas how this system works, and maybe if you're interested in then, you can venture into home automation using Taphome as well. So let me talk about the hardware setup that I have here. I mentioned briefly before that there is a Taphome core. So this is the core unit, and this has the built-in processing for to do the actual home automation. So probably there is some sort of single board computer running some version of Linux. I don't have any details on that. So yeah, that's this stands for core and processing unit. As you can see, it connects to the internet using a LAN connection, which I have up there. And with this unit, you already have some input and output connection. And here on the top, there are 6 connections that are labeled UO1 to 6, which is universal output. So that means that it can drive a relay, but it can drive other things. So you can configure these outputs to be I think 0 to 10 volt analog output as well. And you also have some UI 1 to 6 up there, which is universal input. So again, that can be just a simple switch input. So I have these 4 switches connected to that, but you can also connect other inputs. So for example, I have a NTC temperature sensor here that's connected directly to one of the inputs. So you can use it as analog inputs and digital inputs as well. This is why it's universal input. And on the bottom, we have a power connection. So this is 24 volts and ground. And I have a 24 volt power supply here, which you can't see that. But once we go through the product catalog, then we can see what that looks like. And we have also 3 bus connection, bus 1, 2, 3. Bus 1, 2, and 3. And this is a proprietary bus protocol. So they are using RS486, which means that the cable length could be easily up to 600 meters. And these buses allow you to connect other Taphome, basically slave units, like inputs and outputs that the core is going to communicate with. And in one output, you can connect, I think, up to 30 or 32 devices. So you have potentially up to 90 devices connected to all bus 1, 2, and 3. But also you can configure any of these buses not to be one of the Taphome buses, but for example, in my case, I'm using bus 3 as a serial mode bus. So that is connected to this backup mode bus thermostat. So I've configured this device for bus 1 and 2 use as the Taphome bus, and 3 you can use it for mode bus. And of course there are a few other options how you can use the outputs as well. So we are going to see that. But I mean, mode bus serial is one of the basic or probably the most used one. And of course I use the bus to connect the second unit, and also I have a third unit here. So the second unit is a 12 digital output, 12 universal input module. So as you can see, it has 12 digital output. So 1 to 9 here, and then 10 to 12 here. And these are relayed output. So you can switch mains voltage directly, and each of the relays supports 16 amps and I think they even support some inrush current, so they most probably are not going to burn in if you're using LED lights. And we also have 12 universal inputs. So again, at the moment, I just have these 4 push buttons connected to it. But as I said, it is universal input, so it can be digital inputs or it can be analog inputs. So temperature sensors, you can connect 4 to 20 milliamp analog sensors to it. So there is, and they also sell a few different sensors. So that's nice. And you also get, I also, as part of this demo bundle, I also got this 2 UI module, which has 2 inputs, 2 universal inputs. So at the moment there is another thermistor connected to it, and it also has 2 extensions here on the bottom, which is like, for example, you can have temperature sensors connected to here, or humidity sensors, or CO sensors. So this is designed to be behind your your switches in your room, so like a 2-gang switch, and also provide a temperature reading. So that's how you can just make your old light switches smart if you have a 2-gang switch. And as you can see, nothing is wireless, everything is connected to this bus, and that's how the whole unit communicates. And there are a lot of different these sort of slave units sold, so you can just pick whatever you need for your house implementation. And actually, I also wanted to go through this, the hardware a little bit. I already scrolled through where I was talking about the history, but as you can see, they do have a few dedicated switch controls, and I had the chance to hold this in my hand, and they feel really, really premium products. These have they are all touch screens. So as you can see, this has 6 touch zones. So basically, you just touch it, and then it's going to switch, and each of them are connected to the bus. So you just buy this switch, and you just need the 2, A and B wires to wire them up in a long chain. You also have this type of switch, which has I think it has 5 zones, so in the 4 corners and in the middle. And all of these switches, they have a small ambient light at the bottom, so it's sort of like a homing light, and you can also configure that to dim. And they also have a built-in temperature and humidity sensor, so with this you are getting basically everything. They also provide a very interesting zone controller, which can be configured as a thermostat, and it can also be configured to show or control a few other devices. And it is interesting in a way that this is a small e-ink screen, so it is really easy to read in all conditions. So the idea is that you can have these screens or these units to control your temperature, or otherwise the mobile app. I think there is a section somewhere in the documentation how you can make the mobile app into kiosk mode. So you can have, let's say, an old iPad or an old tablet, and have the Taphome application running on it, and that would be basically your home controller touch screen. And once we go into the application, you can see that you can create several dashboards. So maybe you can create a specific dashboard for your upstairs or downstairs, and have your iPad show that screen which is upstairs, and another one which is downstairs is going to show you a slightly different screen. I talked about the control unit. You can purchase some power supplies, 24 volts, and then you have all these input-output modules. So this is the 12 output, 12 input that I have. There is a separate 12 digital output module. There is a 24 UI input module. So that basically 24 of these UI inputs. There is a LED module, so that can drive LED strings or LED strips directly. So anything up to 24 volts or 12 volts, you can drive these. So this is specific LED controller. And of course, they will be able to control your strip using PWM. You also have a dimmer module for mains voltage. analog output module. So if you want to, control furnaces, the other HVAC units, probably they would be able to communicate using, let's say, 0 to 10 volt output. And there is also, a BLE module. So for certain blinds and window motors that you can drive them using BLE. And now we get into these small modules. Oh, by the way, so all of these communicate using the internal Taphome bus. And we come to this small unit. So for example, this is the 2UI module that I just showed you. But there is also a slightly bigger one, which is 6UI and 4UI and 2 digital outputs. So this can drive lights directly from the, let's say, from the wall socket. And there is like a 6UI, so bus module. So this could be, maybe where you have a lot of light switches. So you have like 6 light switches, or maybe you can use some of the other UIs for temperature sensor, something like this. And so I already come to the sensor section. So there is various temperature sensors, and then they also have a dedicated environment sensor. So this is temperature, humidity, ambient light, and wind speed. So this could be good in automations where you have to move blinds or awnings in depending on the wind speed. Air humidity and temperature sensors. So this is the one I said that it connects to this unit here, to these connections. There is also CO2, rain sensors, smoke detectors, motion alarms, motion sensors, rain gauge, flood sensors. And then for the lights, there are some dedicated devices like, DALI, KNX, DMX controllers. And there is a separate access solution as well, because you can purchase this VGAN gateway that also connects to the Taphome bus, and you can control VGAN devices. So pin readers, card readers, video doorbells, as I said, electronic card readers, and that whole access functionality is built into the app. So you can just, create users that you would identify either with PIN or a card, and then you can give them access. What should happen if the card is read, open the door, turn on the lights, that sort of stuff. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I think these were the more specific to the actual Taphome hardware. And as I said, on top of all these, you can configure the bus to just be a generic Modbus interface. So you can just read any Modbus RTU devices, and of course it can also support Modbus TCP. So any old, let's say older, chillers, air circulation systems, or HVAC systems that use Modbus, this device would be able to control them. And they also provide a lot of template profiles that already support some dedicated devices. So you don't even have to configure them. You just say that, oh yeah, I have this Daikin chiller on Modbus, and that's the address, and it just knows which registers to read in order to get the data from them. What I want to do now is I want to give you a quick feel of how the screen and the configuration looks like. And of course, I'm going to go through this configuration in a lot more detail in the future videos. So as I said, there is a mobile app. There is mobile app for Android, iOS, and there is also a Windows phone version. But they also have a desktop app, which is for Windows or Linux. And this is what you can see here. And the reason I like to use the desktop app, because there is a lot more that you can see on the desktop app. So here I'm just going to overlay the phone app, or the Android app that I'm using. So you can pretty much see the same thing. So for example, if I'm showing my dashboard here, which is pretty empty at the moment, that's how the dashboard looks like in the mobile app. And if I bring up the menu, then I see the same menu that you see on the lower part of the screen. And if I select any device, for example, the thermostat, I see the screen which you see on the right side of the desktop app. So but other than that, all the functions, all the features that you want, is available in the desktop app, and it's available in the mobile app as well. So this is why I said it is really easy to access all the configuration and make any changes from your phone. I mean, of course, I go through the details in the video, in the subsequent videos, but just wanted to give you some ideas of how it looks like. So in the desktop app and also in the phone app, you have a couple of sections, but of course the main section is the dashboard, where you can, configure what you want to see on the screen, in what order you should be seeing your light switches and everything, and thermostats. So you can configure and then basically just pick and choose which devices to show here, and they will appear as boxes like here. And when you select them, they show up. Well, okay, so this one you can just change the value, but for a thermostat, then it brings up the main thermostat screen, what you can see here. I haven't configured anything on the dashboard, and as you can see, you can configure multiple dashboards. So maybe you can just have a dedicated dashboard for a iPad, which is upstairs on the wall mounted, and that's going to be the dashboard for your upstairs lights and everything. Whenever you create any device, you will put them into zones, which is basically your rooms, or you can add them to categories. So if you select any of these, that would just pre-filter all your devices just to show you the ones that are in either that zone or in the category. And I quickly also want to take you through the settings because this is where I'm going to show you some of the features. So software update is obviously a software update, but I already updated mine to the latest software. So in the profiles, you can create user accounts, and so obviously you would register with your user account and assign that core unit to your user account, but you can create separate user accounts for your family members. Of course, they would have different accesses, and yeah, maybe you don't want to give them access to some of the devices that you only want to control. And by the way, this whole setup supports multiple locations. So I have one location configured, but if I would have Taphome in my other, for example, in my holiday home, that can be another location, and that could be added here. So with one app, I can control multiple homes. In the hardware, we will see that how you can configure the device to talk to external devices as well. So as I said, there is already a few integration built in. We haven't seen this in the hardware, but actually there is a Zigbee unit which controls to the Taphome bus, and that would be your Zigbee coordinator. So you can expand your wired Taphome setup with Zigbee devices as well. So this is what I use to configure my backup thermostat, which is on Modbus, but this is where you would configure all your modules that are connected in your setup as well. And it's really easy because you need more output units, so you just purchase another of these box or another box, you connect it to a Taphome bus, you connect it to 24 volts, and then you come here and say find new devices, and it's just going to find the new device on the Taphome bus which was not configured before. And once you do that, you can start using the inputs and the outputs. There are, again, you can create virtual devices. So there are a lot of different virtual devices. I mean, they are virtual devices. For example, an RGB light is a virtual device because it uses, let's say, 3 or 4 outputs, depending on whether it's an RGB or an RGBW light. So you create a virtual device and you tell that, okay, the red output is this, the green output is this, and the blue output is that. And it's a similar story for the other things as well. I haven't created any variables, but that's again just to expand your home automation logic. You can store some values in variables and you can build logic based on them. And the exposed devices, that's the thing how you can expose your Taphome setup to other third parties. And so there is Amazon Alexa integration, there is a Taphome API, and as you can see, there are some integration, Modbus TCP, RTU, and there is also some standard integration protocol using TCP or UDP, and there is a part in the documentation where they said how they can integrate with Home Assistant. So you can have this with a lot of logic built in, and still maybe you can have a Home Assistant next to it, integrated with it, that that can be used to create integration with things that Taphome doesn't support, but there is a plugin for Home Assistant. And finally, as I said, the whole access policy or the access thing is built into this. So you can, as I said, you can create access card and access readers, and manage the logs and everything. So yeah. And finally, I want to show you some not so much big configuration, but how things are going to look like. So if I go back to hardware, I can see my units, so the core unit and the 12 digital input, digital output. And here I can configure all the digital outputs and also the inputs. So I can say that, okay, this digital output is going to drive the kitchen light, and this is a digital output or a PWM output. And in the universal inputs, I'm going to use input 1 for the kitchen switch, and input 2 is going to be for the living room switch. But in the core module, I've configured the couple of switches here as well. But as you can see, for example, this temperature sensor that I showed you before, this is connected to UI5. So that UI5 is configured as a temperature input. So again, universal input is universal because it can be these many things. So read contact is on and off, push button, impulse counter. So let's say you have a magnetic sensor that you hook onto your water meter or your gas meter, so that you can configure this as an impulse counter. So Taphome would keep track of your water usage or your gas usage. And you can just use it as an analog input, or in my case, I use it as a temperature input. So as I said, for everything you create a zone and you create a category. And so once you configure these, then you head back to your devices, and these things will show up in your devices. So you can see the boiler switch, for example, and let's say that's the kitchen light switch. So you bring up the let's say the details, and here you can create new rules. So if I want this light switch, so if I press this switch, you can see this output toggles. It's a very crappy switch. These are one of these cheap Chinese craps. But you can see that the other one toggles the other output. So I can configure this by coming here into the switch. That's the input for the switch, and I say that I create a new smart rule, and you have tons of different things how you can create a smart rule. So I'm just going to scroll slowly. I always have to be aware of where the overlay is. It used to be in the lower corner here, but I moved it because there is some interesting stuff usually happening in this part of the screen. So anyway, you can see all these things that you can configure as a trigger. And of course, the trigger that you see here is that's for a push button input. If you have another type of input like temperature or something, your rules are going to be slightly different. But you can see that this is my kitchen light rule, and so the trigger is that the kitchen light switch, something happens with the kitchen light switch input, and then because it's a button input, the whole Taphome system gives me 4 different options. So I can do something if it was a simple press, if it was a long press, or if it was a double click, or it was a triple click. And I just configure this so that if I do a one press, then it turns the lights on. I need to change this switch. And if and the same happens with the other button, turns the other light on. But if I long press it, then it's going to turn both of the lights off. And that's what I configured here. On long press, kitchen light off, living room light off. And For example, you can see that for each of these logics, you can also configure a limiting condition. So do I want to limit something based on a formula, or based on a time, or based on a digital input, or a multi-value switch? And this is what I have done here. I don't know if you noticed, but this LED here blinks, and this is my circulation pump. And if I look at the circulation pump, it has two different rules. So there is a circulation pump schedule, which says that between 7 a.m. and midnight, I want the circulation pump to follow an impulse pattern. So there is an on and an off cycle, and each is for 5 seconds, and this cycle should repeat forever. I mean, of course, normally that would be like, run for 5 minutes and don't run for half an hour or something like that for a circulation pump, which is going to circulate the hot water. So when you open the tap, you get hot water immediately. And this rule has a condition which says that it should only run if my presence is at home. Because if I'm away or if I'm on vacation, well, nobody's going to use the tap, so there's no point running the circulation pump. So this is that's the scheduling condition for that. And I also have another rule which says turn off the pump, and this again has a limiting condition, which is if I'm away or vacation, then of course the circulation pump is turned off. So as you can see, I mean, there is an awful lot of different options here, and I've only scratched the surface so far. You can see that for a simple temperature sensor, how many different rules you have available. I mean, probably this is a slightly bit less, but you could see that for push buttons and stuff. And there is a lot of things that are specific to devices. So I'm not really sure if I would be able to pick this, but in one of the devices I have seen things like I want to control the blinds based on the position of the sun. So for blinds, you can configure what direction the window is facing, and you can just automatically lower the blinds when the sun is about to come in the summer. I mean, this is something that I do all the time. Like in the summer, the kids' room, especially if they are at school, I always lower the blinds because it just helps maintaining a cooler temperature in those rooms and not having to run the AC for the full day. But all these things are configured in. So, I mean, clearly they have been working on this solution for quite a few number of years, and they definitely incorporate a lot of things that's been probably coming back from customers, what they want and what they don't want, and I think there is a good mix of sort of summer and winter stuff here. This is probably something special to, let's say, Central Europe, where we also have really hot summers. So you really have to think about how you are not going to let so much sun into your house, not to heat it up, but also we have cold winters. So all the things about how you optimize heating. And I remember somewhere here, I think it was in the thermostat, you can have rules which is basic schedules, but computes temperature of heating or cooling medium based on the outdoor temperature. So this is, for example, what I'm using at home, that I have an outside temperature sensor, and I calculate the hot water for the surface heating, so the radiant heating, based on the outside temperature, and that's also calculated here. So you say, okay, what is my outside temperature sensor, and you can configure your parameters, how the heat, the water temperature is going to be calculated, and you configure the actuator as well, what is going to control that. So if this is your heater or your boiler, which can receive this data, let's say on an analog output, you can configure that analog output here. But again, if I go back just to show you a few. I mean, I do this show all so you can see all the different actions and, you know, smart things that it supports, you know, PID controller. That's probably good for temperature as well, but if you want to control, yeah, adjust, yeah, as I said, blind adjustment according to sun. So there is a lot of smart rules built in already, which I really, really liked. I mean, of course, this became apparent when, you know, once I listened to the 2-hour demonstration and live training, but that was really, really useful. I realized that I'm already recording for 44 minutes, so this is way more than I wanted to do now, but I guess you get the idea now. And I've already recorded one of the configuration sessions, and whatever I did on that first configuration session, that's basically what you can see here. And I would probably release that video, you know, shortly after this goes live. So that's going to be the follow-up, and I would try to think about some additional scenarios that I can, you know, showcase you with this demo unit for you. And if you have some specific ideas, you can let me know in the comment section, and, you know, I can try to configure that in one of these configuration sessions. But I think that would be all for today. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.